We are getting closer and closer to the start of World's Strongest Man this year, so we continue our countdown of all 30 athletes competing. Today, we're looking at Coco. So until is Coco, Jean-Stephen Coraboeuf, representing France, but actually lives and is a resident of Australia. He had his first World's Strongest Man last year. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, let's go through his facts and stats. So Coco is still relatively new to the international scene, and this year's World's Strongest Man will be his 6th international competition. He's been competing at a national level in Australia since 2017, and he won the title Australia's Strongest Man in 2019. Last year was Coco's first appearance at the World's Strongest Man, and he placed 3rd in his group, ultimately losing out on the stone off to Aethor Ingelsson Melstead.
Yeah, he actually did really well in his first World's Strongest Man. Now, we do have to point out that that group probably fell apart a little bit last year.
Evan fell apart in that group.
Evan fell apart in that group. And even Kim, at his first World's Strongest Man, felt the pressure. I don't think he performed as maybe well as he could. And, you know, Coco's opportunity was there. He kind of performed pretty well in a few events and got himself into the stone off, eventually losing out to Aethor, as you said. Now, Coco approached me about 5-6 weeks ago to coach him, and the first thing I said was we really can't do an awful lot in that kind of time. So it was about just trying to prepare him as well as possible for this year's competition. Now, Coco has been very, very busy. Him and his beautiful wife just had a beautiful baby recently, so congratulations on that. But he's been travelling a lot. He came over to the UK for Europe's Strongest Man. The pace of his first ever Giants Live, real shock to him.
I think it was a shock to his system,
we were trying to, I was talking to him before the competition. I was like, you have to go and enjoy this experience. You know, it's going to be fast paced. You're going to compete in front of a huge crowd. It's very, very different to any show that he's done before. I mean, we saw him obviously in Australia in January for the Australia's Strongest International, where there was a crowd, but a much, much smaller crowd, very intimate, a bit slower paced than, say, a Giants Live would be. And Coco came up to me afterwards. He said the pace of the show really surprised him.
Yeah.
He didn't realise quite how quick it was. He ended up not warming up between events, which kind of for someone like myself who's done so many is standard. You kind of, you know to expect that you try and get warmed up before that first event.
And to be fair, with the exception of Dennis Chorus, all of the guys who are competing there are used to Giants Live shows and that pace and that equipment as well. So not making excuses for Coco, but I think he looked dazed and confused throughout the whole thing.
Did.
Like, you know, someone had flashed him and then slapped him.
It was good for him to get it under his belt before World's Strongest Man, because there's a few things that we've spoken about privately that I feel he can improve on, certainly. One big thing, like things like the log, just moving quicker.
Yeah.
I was getting frustrated watching him because he was kind of plodding between implements, and you just can't do that at that level unless you are that confident that you can do all of them. Yeah. And it's just not a position that many people are in.
But like we said, this will be his 6th international competition, so it's all experience, isn't it?
Absolutely. Anyway, enough rambling.
Yes.
We are representing, so let's get into the events and see how we think Coco can do. So starting off with the loading, World's Strongest Man. Now, he's been training loading in sand.
That's good.
It's good. I've tried to get some of the athletes to go and train in sand if they have that option. Coco does. They're going to be loading in sand when they get to World's Strongest Man. And if you've never loaded on sand before, it is brutal. I mean, especially for some of the bigger guys.
I don't like walking on sand.
Well, if you ever kind of, particularly if it's soft sand, if they've compacted it, which sometimes they do, it's not so bad. When it's soft and your kind of feet squidge into that sand, it's draining. Every step you take is just so much harder, and your legs go to absolute jelly. So he has been training this pretty hard. He's been looking good in training. His loading at Europe's was not so good, though. So there's that kind of, you know, doing it in training and then repeating and applying that technique into competition is where he needs to improve now. I think if he can kind of mimic what he's been doing in training, then he could pick up some points on this one. But as we know, loading, fast and furious at World's Strongest Man, it will be heavy as well. There'll be a lot of good guys in this group. He needs to get off to a good start and get somewhere, I think, mid-table. That will be good enough.
So the deadlift machine is going to be new to Coco, and last year they did the deadlift ladder in the group stages, and Coco came second in his group.
He did, which was fantastic, and you'd think on paper Coco's going to, smash the deadlift. Didn't do so well at Europe's on the deadlift.
No.
His training's looking good, and I said that, this has kind of been a story of recent performance. Trainings look good. Europe's didn't go to plan. Now, I'm hoping Europe's was just a one-off, and we see the best Coco at World's Strongest Man. I think now that the baby's arrived, he knows he's not going to miss that.
Yeah.
He can kind of relax a bit, go to World's Strongest Man, and allow himself to perform as well as he can. The reality is, his deadlift is not going to be good enough to take maximum points in any group. But he's a solid deadlifter. He's in that group of athletes that he needs to be in the right group. And I think if he can apply that kind of speed that I'm trying to teach him, because I think at the moment he's just a little bit too much from like the bodybuilding kind of standpoint of mind-muscle connection. Still, he looks fantastic if you kind of look at him physically. He has a bit of a bodybuilding kind of background.
Yeah.
And even with his log lifting, I'm trying to make sure he understands that everything at World's Strongest Man is timed.
Yeah.
So
every rep.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure he's using his whole body on these movements and not thinking about, okay, just the back or the glutes and things like that. You should stop thinking about muscle connection when you are lifting for power or for speed. You are a competition. It's about applying it as quick as possible. So even if you can match someone in reps, sometimes whoever does it quicker becomes a factor at Worlds. So these are things that you have to think about as an athlete. And he's strong enough to, I think it's 380, 385 is his PB.
Yeah.
So it's a solid deadlift. But as we've said, under 400 is considered average at this level. So he needs the right group of a few people that he can pick up points with. He's proven that he can do that at last year's World's Strongest Man. He's not going to challenge any of the top deadlifters.
So he now has experience on a log ladder, and as it's one of his favourite events, I know he's going to want to improve on his performance at Europe's Strongest Man.
Yeah, he's very, very strong in the shoulders. Really great pressing power, very good strict pressing power. Again, since he's kind of been working with me, we're trying to make sure...
You're forget that.
It's not forget that.
No.
You want to maximise what people are strong at,
of course.
But you also want to make them understand how to be better. So I'm trying to teach him about, okay, we need to be quick, we need to apply leg drive and speed and try and get these reps over as quick as possible. You can't just sit there admiring how strong you are at World's Strongest Man, because there's a guy in the next lane that's already two logs ahead. That could be an issue for him. He's strong enough to do 3, I believe, in a fast time. I think 4 will be hard. I think 5 will be impossible.
Yeah.
So
3 in a fast time, though, that would actually be good points. That was good points at Europe's Strongest Man. And here, obviously, they're going to be smaller groups, aren't they?
He's got to focus on speed.
Yeah.
There's lots of athletes that are capable of hitting 3. Yeah. It comes down to, again, as I said, who's quicker. If you can get 3 quick, and then you've got a little bit of time, you can have an attempt at that 4th. But you don't want to kind of put all your eggs into one basket by thinking, okay, I'm going to do 4 or I'm going to do 5, because there is a potential you don't. And then you drop back massively. Secure those points, secure 3 or 4 points, and then attempt to get the 5 or 6 points. That would be my tactics. That's what I tell my athletes to do, depending on their strength levels. You go in with different tactics with Bobby Thompson to say, a Faddy who's at his first and their log level is completely different.
Yeah, of course.
But he is capable, Coco is capable of potentially 4 points, I think, on this event. Maybe more in the right group.
Yeah.
He needs to apply the right tactics. And if he does, I think he can pick up points on the log. Conan's.
Yeah, Conan's did not go well for Coco at Europe's Strongest Man, but I think at this point of the competition, he was really starting to suffer with the pace of the show. And it may look relatively quick on TV when you watch it, or if you're there in the live audience. Out back it is manic. You come off, it's literally, right, get ready, the list is up, this is the running order, we need you guys out in however many minutes. It feels so fast, doesn't it?
It does, and quite honestly, it has to be. If you want to put on live shows that keep people entertained, that is important. And as athletes, they have to adapt to that. So, World's Strongest Man, we have the luxury that it's much slower paced.
Yes.
And I think the fact that he's going to have that slower pace, he's used to that slower pace, did Worlds last year, he's able to warm up. He likes to warm up before each event. So, he'll have those opportunities at Worlds. And I expect a much, much better performance from him on the Conans. His training is actually looking very good. He has a Conans at his gym.
That's good.
He's been working really hard on it. He's hit some good distances.
Good.
So I think fresh, He could do okay on this one. Much better than we saw at Europe's.
Well, a lot of guys, the pace at Worlds suits them much better. I mean, I know you didn't like the hanging around.
No, I was someone that liked to get on with it. But some athletes do like that slow. Terry Hollands loved the slower pace. Tom Stoltman loves that slower pace. Some athletes don't. Some athletes like the one-day shows, the faster pace, and getting on with it as quick as possible.
So I'm going to have to ask you about this one, as we have no record of him doing throwing in competition, and the next event is the kettlebell throw.
Yeah, this one will be tough for Coco. He's one of the shortest athletes competing. I think, he's training it. Like all these events, we're trying to make sure he's well prepared as possible, but he's not going to go and challenge the top throwers. It's going to be, focus on your lane, focus on getting as many of these kettlebells over the bar as possible, and then see what happens. You can't force things sometimes, especially in 5 weeks. We've not had the longest time to work to get ready for these events, so it's just going to be about trying to do the best that he can. Kettlebells are something people make mistakes on, so he needs to focus on what he can do and hope someone else maybe falters somewhere to pick up a few points.
So the stone off is a position he found himself in last year, and you may look at it this year and think, it's going to be hard to get to a stone off. But I would have thought that last year, not knowing who Coco was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't know the groups yet. You don't know who you're going to be up against. We never know what's going to happen.
Look, it's World's Strongest Man and anything is possible. Now, I have my opinion on who I think is a favourite. You guys have your opinions.
Yeah, of course.
But we never know for sure what's going to happen. You need to be prepared. And like last year, you said he was in a stone off. We could see him in a stone off again if things go the right way. Right now, my kind of personal view for Coco is he needs to focus on his own performance and allow what to happen, get the experience. If you get yourself in that opportunity, you fight your ass off. It's as simple as that. You can't force things.
No.
So he's not one of the favourites in my books, and personally I don't expect him to get to the final, although I would love to see it, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
I think, we still need a little bit of work to really make that happen, to get him to that level where he is genuinely a finalist at World's Strongest Man and contender. I think we're still 2 years away from that, to be honest. I know sometimes people they've seen me criticise maybe Gav Bilton in the past and said he needs a few more years, and we're seeing that with Gav now. He's been progressing, and some athletes do.
And just like having the opportunity to compete against the best in the world, it really helps people raise their level.
It's huge. It's good for your own personal kind of development in terms of your branding as an athlete and being noticed. It's good in terms of experience, getting more competitions. You look at the athletes that have a lot of competition experience. Ivers is a great example of this. Zydrunas was a great example of this. They tend to learn to relax more. They tend to kind of be able to cope with changes that happen at strongman competitions. And you do see that at these shows. Things change, timings change, things get interrupted. The events get interrupted for TV reasons, and if you are an experienced athlete at coping with these situations, it obviously makes you much more relaxed, much more kind of able to adapt and perform at your best. I sincerely hope Coco enjoys his World's Strongest Man experience. I think he's going to. He seems like the short amount of time we've been working together, such a lovely guy, really happy, and wants to keep progressing, wants to get better. I don't expect to see him in the final this year. Would love it to happen.
Of course.
But we'll be supporting him, we'll be rooting for him, and I hope he kind of just takes on the advice that I've given him and focuses on his performance, remembers that it's not just about who lifts the most, but who can do things quicker as well, sometimes at strongman competitions. And I think if he can go away knowing he's performed at the best he can, he'll be a happy man. Right, guys, as always, we hope you're enjoying these videos. I hope you didn't mind me going into coach mode a little bit more there than maybe
you give good advices.
Sometimes.
I think it's good. we could charge for this content,
Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please remember, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.